and welcome to day 46, Psalm 46 of this amazing journey through the Psalms that we have been on together. I'm Claire and I'm married to Jez, and we have 4 incredible children from toddler up to teenager with a couple in between. And like many of you around the world, we are relatively new on this adventure that we're calling homeschooling. And one of the things that I say at least twice a week is, right kids, it's time for PE. And what I mean by that is you have got to get out of the house and run off some of the energy that currently cannot be contained within these 4 walls. And so off they go. And one of the things that they like to play is a game called tag. You know the one? Somebody's it, they run, chase everybody else, until somebody else gets tagged and then they're it. And they love it. And my 1-year-old, our toddler Kit, he loves it too. But he honestly has no idea what's going on. He honestly has no clue how to play the game. But when he was playing with them a couple of days ago, I noticed something really interesting about how he was playing. When they first started playing and they were excited, he would come and he would mimic the noises that the big 3 were making. He'd sort of squeal with delight and squeeze my arm or my leg to let me know that he was excited by it. At other times, when those shrieks of joy changed to shouts of rage because somebody had been tagged when they didn't want to be, or there'd been yet another infringement of the unknown rules of tag, which become very important when you're playing them, he would rest his hand on my arm and be like, "Are we okay?" And when he'd get that reassurance from me, he'd go off again. Or at other points when he got knocked over in the game because they were playing tag and he's number 4, he'd call out to me, "Mama," and I'd scoop him up and I would put him on my lap and brush him off and send him on his way again. Whatever he experienced, whatever he was feeling, whatever he had that he wanted to show me, he would always come back to me. Why did he do that? Because that's the way that he's made. That's the way that God designed us to be, because he's learned in his nearly 2 years on the earth that I'm a place of safety, that I'm a base from which all adventures and exploration is rooted. He's learned that if he wants something or he needs something, if there's comfort, if he's hurt himself, that I'm the source of those things for him. We've also had the privilege of ongoing privilege of raising 3 kids from a trauma background for whom that natural instinct of, I can trust these grown-ups, I can trust my parents, I'm going to look to them for reassurance, has been affected because of their experiences in their life before. Their brains have been wired not to trust. Their brains have been wired not to lean in to those adults for comfort who would seek to give it to them. And therefore what happens is that they try and figure out things on their own, or they deflect it and blame other people. It comes out in the wrong way, or perhaps they try and ignore those feelings altogether. Because when we've had life experiences that have been challenging, it affects how we relate to one another, and even more so how we relate to God. But Psalm 46 begins like this. It says that my God is an ever-present help in trouble. It says he's my tower of refuge and strength. He's strong. He's my fortress. The psalm goes on to say, it declares the truth of who God is and says, because he is those things, therefore I don't need to fear. Though the mountains may fall into the sea, though the earth gives way. It has this brilliant kind of picture that it paints of calamity that goes on around, dramatic pictures, overwhelming things, feelings, scary things, frightening things. Even if those things happen, I don't need to be afraid because of who God is, because of who I know him to be. Everything flows out of our relationship with God. And I think there are some of you that are watching this and you're like, I wish I knew God like that. I hear people speaking about him, but I don't know how God can be that to me in the circumstances that I'm facing. Everything that is truth in these verses flows out of the state of our relationship with him. But just like with our big kids, it wasn't just one time of telling them we loved them and that they were worthy and valuable. It wasn't just one time of picking them up and putting a plaster on their cut knee that led them to be able to trust us. It's been a process and will be a process of days, weeks, months, years, where they learn and we practice giving and receiving love. How much more when we're talking about learning to love, learning to trust, learning to have faith in, learning to have confidence in the God who never changes, who is faithful when we're faithless, to the God who is perfect in all his ways. You see, today is an opportunity to come before him and say, God, I need you to heal the parts of me that are broken, that are wounded, that have forgotten or never learned how to trust properly. God, would you heal me so that I'm able to learn and practice trust? How do we do that? We take it a step at a time. We take it a day at a time. We declare the things that we believe to be true before we feel them. We learn to declare truth regardless of the circumstances that are going on around them. We learn to get up and go again when we stumble and we fall, which all of us will do. We learn to grow a relationship with God day by day by day. And the fruit of that, as time goes by, will be that we discover in greater measure, with greater depth, whoever you are, wherever you are, there's more of that for us today, in greater depth that he is who he says he is, and therefore we don't need to fear whatever's going on around us. The last thing that I just want to point out in these just 11 verses of this psalm, is that it says the word Selah 3 times. It's a psalm that we've looked at and seen that it paints these pretty dramatic pictures, has these huge concepts, these big statements of God being a fortress and a strength, promises, truths that are powerful that we can hold on to, but they're pretty big and has pretty big implications. But 3 times this word comes up and it means simply to pause in his presence. And verse 10 tells us to be still and know that I'm God. And in the midst of all that is overwhelming, in the midst of trying to figure out how we feel, in the midst of asking God to heal us, in the midst of the turmoil of the world, the turmoil of our heart, the anxiety that we feel, the joy that we feel, whatever it is, the invitation is to pause in his presence. Pause in his presence and allow him to show you who he says he is. Allow him to show you the value that he places on you and to heal your heart so that you can receive, perhaps even for the first time, the love and the worth and the value that he has placed on your life. Selah means to pause in his presence, and whether you find this season being a time where you're busier than ever, or whether you've got stacks more time than you've normally had, or somewhere in the middle, whatever the circumstances are, there's an invitation today in the midst of it all to pause in his presence and to deepen that relationship with God, out of which everything else flows, so that we may be those who can say with the psalmist, God is my ever-present help in times of trouble, therefore I will not fear.